The Boston Celtics have had one of the best regular seasons in the NBA so far, but when the trade deadline arrived, the team opted for a low-key move, adding Torrey Craig. At first glance, it seems like a safe move, a minor adjustment to strengthen the rotation. But does Craig really have a significant role to play, or is he just an extra piece that doesn't change the team's actual capability at all? Many analysts have treated this acquisition as simple insurance for potential injury issues, or resting the starters. But is this perspective realistic, or just an excuse for the front office's lack of a more aggressive move? Let's break down all the implications of this signing, raise questions that few are asking, and expose whether the Celtics truly needed Craig, or if he's just an illusion of reinforcement. Looking at the Celtics roster objectively, Craig seems more like a back-end rotation player rather than a crucial addition. The team already has a solid core of players who dominate the minutes on the court. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford. When the playoffs arrive, Missoula won't have the luxury of rotating the roster the same way he does in the regular season. So, where does Craig fit into this equation? What is the real need for adding him to the roster? The Celtics already have a strong defensive system, mainly excelling due to its versatility. Players like White and Holiday can guard multiple positions, while Porzingis and Horford provide rim protection. Craig, while a solid defender, doesn't represent a significant upgrade in that regard. On the other hand, if the Celtics truly trusted Sam Hauser or Peyton Pritchard in crucial moments, would they have felt the need to bring in a player like Craig? This move might indicate that the franchise has noticed weaknesses in the roster that aren't yet obvious to the public. Perhaps Missoula doesn't fully trust Hauser to defend more physical players, or has concerns about Pritchard against taller opponents in the playoffs. Does that mean Craig might be a better option than he appears? Or is he just an extra piece to be used in specific situations without real impact on the main rotation? When a team makes such a discreet move, it's important to ask, was this a genuine basketball decision or just a marketing play to create the impression that we did something? The truth is that this season's trade and buyout market wasn't particularly exciting. Most top teams failed to make major impact moves. Was Craig's arrival just the Celtics' way of avoiding the narrative that they did nothing to improve the roster? Looking at the numbers, Craig might seem like a useful piece. He has shot over 39% from three-point range in recent seasons and brings a solid defensive mindset. But is that enough to make a difference? Ultimately, he is a rotation player who will likely see no more than 10 to 15 minutes in crucial games. He might be useful in certain matchups, but it's unlikely he'll have a real impact in a playoff series against elite teams like the Milwaukee Bucks or Denver Nuggets. Additionally, there's an overlooked issue. Could Craig end up being a problem for team chemistry? The Celtics have a well-defined rotation, with players already accustomed to their roles. If Craig starts getting more minutes, it could disrupt the roles of players like Hauser and Pritchard. That could lead to internal dissatisfaction and even hurt the team's rhythm. Since Craig arrived in Boston, Joe Missoula has made a point of highlighting his defensive versatility. The coach emphasizes that he can guard multiple positions and that his experience will be valuable in the playoffs. But will that actually translate into real minutes in the rotation? The Celtics are already one of the best defensive teams in the league. They have an established defensive core with Jrue Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum on the perimeter, along with Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford protecting the paint. Even against the best offenses in the NBA, Boston has successfully limited opponents. There's one overlooked factor in this acquisition. Joe Missoula has struggled to make tactical adjustments in critical games. During last season's playoffs, the coach was criticized for being slow to adapt his strategy against the Miami Heat. In a scenario where Missoula struggles with a tough matchup, Craig could be a piece that provides more defensive flexibility. Against teams that exploit mismatches, like the Bucks with Giannis or the Heat with Butler, Craig might serve as an option to prevent Tatum and Brown from being overloaded on defense. The problem is that this only works if Missoula knows when and how to use Craig. The coach doesn't have a history of making major tactical adjustments, so trusting that he'll insert Craig at the right moment could be a mistake. On paper, Torrey Craig is a solid player. He defends well, can hit three-pointers, and fits the profile of a classic 3-and-D player. But in practice, he might not have space in the Celtics' rotation when the playoffs arrive. If Craig ends up playing meaningful minutes in crucial games, it could mean Boston was more vulnerable than it seemed. If he's just another name to fill out the roster, then his signing was simply a marketing move to calm the fan base and create the impression that the front office made a move. Can Torrey Craig have a surprise playoff role, or is he just an illusion? The Boston Celtics already have one of the most well-structured rosters in the NBA, with a strong core led by Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and Kristaps Porzingis. The team seems ready for the playoffs without needing major changes. So the question arises, can Torrey Craig actually be an X-factor in crucial postseason moments, or was his signing just a move with no real impact? If there's a scenario where Craig could make a difference, it's against teams that force defensive switches and exploit physical matchups on the perimeter. But is that enough to justify his role in the playoffs? Or are we fooling ourselves into thinking that a player acquired in February could be a key piece when the title race truly begins? There's a problem with this optimistic narrative. Players acquired late in the season rarely become essential in the playoffs. Elite teams like the Celtics already have a well-established system and a defined rotation. When the crucial phase arrives, the trend is for Joe Missoula to trust his main pieces. And that means Craig could end up being a luxury that, in practice, never becomes necessary. Another clear issue is that Craig is joining a team with an already set system. For him to be a factor in the playoffs, he needs to earn Missoula's trust and prove quickly that he can positively impact the game. And NBA history shows that this rarely happens. Players who join a team in February almost never find a real role in decisive games. It's not a matter of talent, but of system adaptation. In the playoffs, the game slows down, and teams expose every weakness in their opponents. For Craig to have a significant role, he not only needs to understand the Celtics' scheme, but also prove that he is a better option than players already in the rotation, like Sam Hauser or even Peyton Pritchard. Joe Missoula has already shown that he prefers a tight rotation in critical moments. Last season, we saw him drastically cut secondary players' minutes in the playoffs, relying heavily on his stars. Craig might have some utility, but will Missoula have the confidence to play him in a Game 6 or 7 of a close series? Or will he end up being just another bench name, used sporadically with no real impact? It's important to remember that Craig was a rotation player for the Phoenix Suns and Chicago Bulls. In neither of those teams did he become a crucial playoff piece. So what would make things different in Boston? At the end of the day, Craig could be useful in certain situations, but viewing him as an X-factor might be an overstatement. The reality is that mid-season acquisitions usually get stuck at the end of the rotation, and Boston already has a strong, well-established core. If Craig gets consistent playoff minutes, it means something went wrong, whether an unexpected injury or a last-minute adjustment. Otherwise, he'll just be another name on the roster with no real impact on the title chase. Torrey Craig, a real addition or just a luxury bench piece for the Celtics? Torrey Craig's arrival in Boston raises more questions than answers. Is he truly a piece that can add value to the team in the playoffs? Or was this just a move to fill a roster spot and create the illusion that the front office was active at the trade deadline? Did the Celtics really need this reinforcement, or did they just make a move to avoid criticism for standing pat? On paper, Craig offers valuable qualities: versatile, defense, good size to guard multiple positions, and a relatively reliable three-point shot. But is that enough to guarantee real minutes in the playoffs? Or are we looking at a player who will be forgotten when things get serious? The answer to this question won't come during the regular season. Only in the playoffs will we truly see if Craig is a brilliant pickup or just another name buried at the end of the bench. A tough path to playoff minutes. Craig's biggest challenge isn't his individual skill. It's the fact that the Celtics already have a well-defined and established rotation. The team's core, Tatum, Brown, White, Holiday, Porzingis, and Horford, will not lose minutes easily. On top of that, players like Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard are already familiar with the system and have Missoula's trust. That means Craig not only needs to adapt quickly, but also prove that he can be more useful than the guys already in place. And let's be honest, that's no easy task. NBA history is clear. Players acquired mid-season rarely become key pieces in the playoffs, especially on title-contending teams. The trend is for Craig's minutes to shrink as the postseason approaches. If that happens, his signing will have been more of a marketing move, an attempt by the front office to show they were doing something, despite no major changes. Craig may be sold as a reinforcement, but his real function might just be as an insurance policy in case something goes wrong. And that's a crucial distinction. If Boston were truly confident in its bench, this signing wouldn't have happened. The fact that they felt the need to add another wing suggests that there may be internal concerns about how players like Hauser and Pritchard will perform against elite opponents in the playoffs. But the real question is, does Craig actually solve that problem? He's been a solid role player with the Phoenix Suns and Chicago Bulls, but never a difference maker in critical moments. If Boston is betting on him to elevate the second unit, they might be setting themselves up for disappointment. Will Craig matter when it counts? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what Craig does in the regular season. What truly matters is his impact in the playoffs. He might fit perfectly and become a valuable piece, or he could finish the season as an irrelevant name in the rotation. And history isn't on his side. Mid-season role-player acquisitions on contending teams rarely become decisive factors. The team's rhythm is already set. The rotation minutes are mostly locked in, and the coach's trust in his main guys is sky high. For Craig to earn a real role, he would need to excel in an area where Boston is currently lacking, and right now it's unclear if he's that guy. If he isn't used in the biggest games, what will that say about his signing? Was it just a move to appear active in the market? Or is there a real plan for him that we haven't seen yet? A difficult situation, for Craig finds himself in a tough spot. He needs to convince Joe Missoula that he deserves minutes while outperforming players who are already comfortable in the system. It's not enough to be good. He has to be better than the existing options. If Craig fits well, Boston might have found a valuable role player for specific playoff situations. But if he fails to stand out, his arrival will quickly be forgotten, and the Celtics will continue their championship push without any major changes. And in that case, his signing will have been nothing more than decoration. Hey Celtics fanatics, what do you think of this news? Leave your opinion in the comments, as it's highly valued.